I've been called a lot of things in this industry. Raw, unpolished, not for everyone. My personal favorite, and yes, someone actually said this to my face, too much. Too much ink. Too much attitude. Too much Quinn. Hi, I'm Quinn Avery, 25, tattoo artist at Inkwell, the kind of downtown shop that has a neon skull in the window and a playlist that will make your ears bleed in the best possible way. My arms are covered. My neck has a wildflower running up it that I drew at 2 a.m. during a creative spiral. I've been tattooing since I was 19 and I am, according to every local arts blog in the city, a rising star. Which sounds amazing until you realize the same blogs also call Victoria Ashford flawless. Victoria Ashford. If you've been in this city's tattoo scene for longer than 5 minutes, you know that name. She runs Atelier, this gorgeous, minimalist studio across town where everything is white walls and soft lighting and classical music and clients who tip in full sentences. Her work is technically perfect. Clean lines, precise shading, compositions that look like they were pulled straight out of an art history textbook. She's won Best Tattoo Artist at the citywide Ink Awards for 3 years running. I've come second. 3 years running. We've never spoken. Not once. We've competed at showcases, been featured in the same articles, been compared in the same comment sections. Quinn's got soul, but Victoria's got skill, and somehow never actually been in the same room at the same time. She exists to me as a name on a trophy I haven't won yet. A reminder that raw and real doesn't always beat technically perfect. The final citywide Ink Awards are in 3 weeks. This year it's not just a plaque. There's a feature in National Ink magazine, a cash prize that would let me finally open my own studio, and a title that sticks to your name like a second skin. This is the one that matters. And Victoria Ashford will be competing. Tonight I needed air, so I did what I always do when my brain gets too loud. I walked. No destination, no playlist, just the city at 2 a.m. doing its weird, alive, slightly unhinged thing. I was cutting through the alley beside the Velvet Room, a bar I'd been to exactly twice, both times with my friend Sasha, who called it the best worst-kept secret in the city, when the side door swung open and someone stumbled out. She had her heels in her hand, mascara tracking down both cheeks, hair that had clearly started the night perfect and was now making its own editorial decisions. She was wearing a silk blouse that probably cost more than my rent, and she was crying in the specific way people cry when they've been holding it in for so long their body just gives up. I almost kept walking. I'm good at minding my business. I've trained myself to be. But then she leaned against the wall and made this sound. Not loud, not dramatic, just this quiet, exhausted exhale that sounded like someone finally putting down something very heavy. And I stopped. "Hey," I said, from a safe distance because I'm not a monster. "You okay?" She looked up. In the low light of the alley, she looked younger than whatever polished, composed version of herself she usually presented to the world. She calculated whether to trust a stranger. "Not really," she said finally. "Fair." I leaned against the opposite wall, giving her space. "I've got nowhere to be." She laughed, short, surprised, like she hadn't expected to. And then she slid down the wall until she was sitting on the ground in her silk blouse and her bare feet, and she said the thing that made my whole walk home different. "I can't keep pretending anymore." I didn't know who she was yet. Not in that light, not with her hair down and her armor completely off. I just saw a person who was tired. So I sat down across from her on the ground like a complete idiot and said, "Pretending what?" And that's when she looked up properly, and the streetlight caught her face, and my stomach dropped straight through the pavement. Victoria Ashford, my rival. The woman whose name has been one place above mine on every trophy for 3 years. Sitting on the ground outside a gay bar at 2 a.m., looking at me like she had absolutely no idea what to do next. And honestly, neither did I.
Enjoying the story? Subscribe now and never miss a single word.
She didn't recognize me. Not at first. And I made the very mature, very rational decision to not say anything about it. "My family thinks I'm at a work dinner," she said, pulling her knees to her chest. "I've told them that every Friday for 4 months." I nodded. Didn't push. The city hummed around us. They would not, they can't, she stopped. Pressed her fingers against her eyes. I've spent my entire life being exactly what they needed me to be. The right school, the right studio, the right aesthetic. Everything controlled, everything perfect. She laughed, but it came out cracked. You should see my Instagram. I've seen your Instagram, I said, before I could stop myself. She looked at me sharply. And there it was. The recognition traveling across her face like a slow wave. Her eyes dropped to my arms, my neck, the wildflower tattoo, and then back up to my face. Oh, she said quietly. Oh no. Quinn Avery, I said, because there was no point pretending otherwise. Hi. She closed her eyes. Of course. I can leave, I offered. No. She said it fast. Then softer. Please don't. So I stayed. And she talked. Not about the competition, not about Atelier, not about any of the things that made us rivals. She talked about growing up in a family where every decision was a performance for someone else's comfort. About learning to be perfect because perfection left no room for questions. About the studio, how she'd built it into exactly what her parents wanted, clean and classical and safe, and how sometimes in the middle of tattooing, she'd look at a client's design and think, this is beautiful, but it's not mine. I've been following your work, she said, at some point around 3 a.m. when we'd moved from the alley to a 24-hour diner 2 blocks down because the ground was genuinely uncomfortable. For about 2 years. I stared at her over my coffee. Your street series, she continued, wrapping both hands around her mug. The one where you tattooed city landscapes on people's ribs. That piece you did on the woman's forearm. The one that looked like a hand-drawn map of somewhere that doesn't exist. She paused. I've thought about that tattoo almost every week since I saw it. My brain was doing that system error, rebooting thing. You hate my work, I said. She looked at me like I'd said something genuinely confusing. Why would you think that? Because I gestured vaguely at everything about her. You're Victoria Ashford. Your work is technically perfect. Mine is, I'm basically graffiti with a needle. Something shifted in her expression. Quinn, she said slowly. I have a folder on my phone. Just your work. I screenshot it whenever it comes up and I look at it when I feel like I've forgotten why I started. The diner was quiet around us. Someone's eggs were getting cold at the counter. Outside, the city was doing its 3 a.m. thing. That's insane, I said. I know, she agreed. Here's the part one didn't expect. She was funny. Not performed funny, not the polished warmth of someone who's good at networking, actually, genuinely funny in this dry, precise way that made me laugh before I'd decided to. She made a comment about a particularly aggressive competition judge that nearly made me spit my coffee. She described her family's reaction to discovering the small star she'd tattooed behind her own ear, hidden, invisible unless you knew to look, like she was recounting a war story. They don't know about tonight, she said finally, stirring her coffee for the 100th time. They don't know about any of the Fridays. They think she smiled, but it didn't reach anywhere useful. They think I'm exactly who they raised me to be. I thought about the voice in my own head. The one that says your work isn't good enough. I'd always assumed Victoria Ashford had never heard that voice, that when you're technically perfect, when every line is clean and every client leaves satisfied, the voice just doesn't show up. I was completely wrong about that. The competition, I said carefully. She tensed slightly. I'm not bringing it up to be weird about it, I added. Are you okay? With all of it? While all of this is also happening. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, my parents are coming. To the awards ceremony. They've never come before, but this year, she exhaled. They want to see the studio win again. They've told everyone. And there it was. The thing underneath the thing. Not just the secret, not just the Fridays at the Velvet Room, but a life where even winning felt like a performance. Where the trophy wasn't proof of something she'd built for herself. It was proof of a person she wasn't sure she wanted to keep being. I left the diner at 4 a.m. with her number in my phone and a feeling behind my sternum I couldn't name. She texted before I even got home. For what it's worth, you're going to win this year. I stared at my screen for a long time. You don't know that, I typed back. No, she replied. But I know your work. And I know what good looks like. I put my phone down. Picked up a sketchbook. Drew for 3 hours straight, the best 3 hours I'd had in months. I didn't think about the competition once.
Enjoying the story? Subscribe now and never miss a single word.
The next week was strange and quiet, and nothing like anything I'd expected. We didn't talk every day, but we texted, the kind that starts with something small and somehow ends up somewhere real. She sent me a photo of a design she'd been sitting on for 6 months, too afraid to pitch to a client. It was stunning, loose and raw, and nothing like her Instagram. "I drew this for me," she said. "I've never tattooed anything just for me." "You should," I said. "Maybe after the competition." "Why after?" She took a long time to answer that one. I found myself sketching differently that week. More honestly. Less trying to prove something to an invisible judge who was probably just my own worst thoughts wearing a blazer. My boss Des noticed. "Whatever's happening," she said, looking at my prep sketches, "keep doing it." She called me 4 days before the awards at 11 p.m. and said, "My parents want dinner the night before." Full strategy session. How to work the press coverage. A beat. I think I'm going to tell them. After the ceremony. Everything. My chest tightened for her. All of it. All of it, she said quietly. The Fridays. The designs I've never shown anyone. The fact that I'm not who they think I am. Victoria. I know it's terrifying timing. It's your timing, I said. That's the only kind that counts. She was quiet for a moment. Then, how are you this calm about everything? I'm not, I said honestly. I stress sketch. I've destroyed 3 notebooks this week. I'm terrified I'm going to show up at this competition and completely freeze. You won't. You don't know that. Quinn, she said, and there was something deliberate in her voice now, like she was choosing every single word. I have been to 3 of your showcases. I stood in the back because I didn't want you to think I was scouting. A small laugh. You don't freeze. You get more yourself. It's honestly the most annoying thing I've ever witnessed. I laughed, genuinely, loudly, in my apartment at 11 p.m., like a complete idiot. The competition was exactly as chaotic as it always is. Bright lights, loud music, every artist in the city in one room pretending they weren't studying each other's work. I did my piece, a cityscape sleeve I'd redesigned 3x0s in the last month, that finally felt like something I'd made for the love of it rather than the winning of it. I didn't look for Victoria across the room. And then I did. She was working with this focused, quiet intensity one recognized now, not as cold professionalism, but as someone who goes very still when something matters to them. Her piece was different from her usual work. Looser. More movement in it. The client was grinning from ear to ear. And I realized standing there with a machine in my hand and nerves the size of Texas, that she wasn't performing for anyone. She was just making something real. Our eyes met across the room. She smiled. Small, private, the kind that didn't perform anything for anyone else in the building. I looked back at my work and finished the last lines with steadier hands than I'd had all year. I didn't win. She didn't either. The trophy went to a guy named Marcus, who works the East Side and absolutely deserved it, and I am almost completely at peace with that. I was packing up my station when I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Hey," Victoria said. She was still in her competition apron, hair slightly loose from whatever it had started as, and she looked lighter. Not happy exactly, not yet, but like something that had been held too tight had finally been allowed to breathe. "Hey," I said back. Very smooth. Very Quinn. "I told them," she said quietly. After the results. Right there in the venue. I went still. "How did it go?" She was quiet for a beat. "How it went?" Then, softer, but I said it out loud. "And I'm still standing." "Yeah," I said. "You are." We stood there in the noise of the room, everyone celebrating around us, and something shifted in the air between us. The same something that had been building since a 2 a.m. alley and a diner, and too many late-night texts about art and honesty and things we'd never shown anyone. She looked at me for a long moment. "I have something to tell you," she said. "Okay." That folder on my phone. She held my gaze. It was never really about the work. My brain did that full system shutdown thing. No thoughts. No words. Just the room going very quiet around the two of us. "Victoria." I know the timing is terrible, she said. I know we've been rivals for 3 years, and you probably have excellent reasons to walk away right now. But I've spent a very long time not saying things out loud, and she exhaled. I'm done with that. I looked at her, really looked at her. The star behind her ear. The loose strand of hair. The person who'd sat on a pavement in her bare feet and told the truth to a stranger because she had nothing left to lose. And I thought about every time I'd told myself my work wasn't good enough. Every time I'd let a voice in my head be louder than what I actually knew. Every time I'd looked at Victoria Ashford and seen only the person one place above me on a trophy, instead of the person who'd been quietly, secretly rooting for me from the back of the room. So I closed the distance between us. And I kissed her. Not dramatic. Not movie style. Just real and warm and a little bit terrifying, like finally tattooing something you've been sketching in secret for months and finding out it looks even better on skin than it did on paper. When I pulled back, she was looking at me with this expression I'd never seen on her before, unguarded, completely, like every layer of the carefully constructed Victoria Ashford had just quietly stepped aside. Okay, she said, a little breathless. That was okay. Yeah, I said. My face felt like it was on fire. It really was. She laughed. And it was the laugh from the diner, real and surprised, and nothing like her Instagram. I decided that was my favorite sound in the city. We walked out together into the night, not holding hands yet, but close enough that our arms kept brushing, both of us figuring out what came next. I didn't win the competition. Didn't get my name on the trophy, but I walked out with her number already in my phone, a sketchbook full of the most honest work I'd ever made, and the specific, terrifying, wonderful feeling of something just beginning. And if you've ever been so busy trying to win that you almost missed what actually mattered, hit that like and subscribe, because honestly, this is only the start.